Use your computer. Okay, so we'll start as soon as Sal stops making the conversation over here.
I need to hear the whole subject.
Sal did. Okay. I'm ready, Rudy. You want to start, please?
Sure. This thing on? All right, I'll speak loudly then. Alberts,
I'm here.
Cooper, Ferguson, Hawley,
Don, he's not here. Steve.
Nelly,
Here.
Johnston. All
Not here.
right, Pratt. Here. Molinaro.
Here.
Petrofessa.
Present.
Robinson.
Present.
Well, it's a big crowd out there. Thank you for coming, Megan. And I'm sorry I don't know the name next to you.
Para Wander.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
No, I can see you with these glasses on. You're just a little. Okay. All righty, what are we doing now?
I didn't think that.
Recognitions, do we have any recognitions? Oh, yes, we just did. Carol Wanda's here, and so is Megan. Okay. Moving forward for public participation. Anybody out there want to talk? Oh, no, seeing none, we'll move forward. The consent calendar. Oh.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
You know, I've been out for a while. All right. That the Board of Education approves the items on the consent calendar, exhibits 16-154 through 16-155 as recommended.
Is there a second by Claus? Anyone have any questions, or is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Before we move on. What? Is there any employee rep in the audience? No students either. Okay. Oh, because it's Tuesday. Our presentation.
Do they not come out on Tuesdays?
There's a card game with Garage Club. Everybody's there. Okay, excuse me, the data presentation. Who is presenting?
Well,
What a guess. Let me guess if I can guess.
Garrett, could you come on up to David, Meg, and Bill? We were going to have a workshop, you recall, but this is data that we reviewed from last year to bring the post stuff. It's the second year that we have the STAR data. I think I would like when you walk in here, look around you, the data, high school, the Denver High School coherence, but these are the things that are going on in the district. Those maneuvers that were placed on those boards were based on partially, and in some cases mainly, on the results that you're going to be seeing tonight. That informed our decision making. So, Bill, I'm told here we want to make it an executive summary quickly. Leave time for Q&A.
Well, you definitely, because that would be for hours, the Q&A. Okay.
We are clear with our marching orders. We understand we're standing between you and Thanksgiving, so we will do that. I'll be very brief, 30 seconds, and then I'll turn over to the team, and then I'll come back at the very end. You have a ton of numbers in front of you. What we're going to try to do is not obviously go through all the numbers, but rather give you the big trend lines, and unpack these for you. So we have a three-part presentation in a sense. Kara's going to start off, and she's going to go through a part of the presentation, kind of set the tone. Meg's going to turn around and take the high school information, and then at the end I'll do a very brief summary, and then certainly any questions that you have, we'd be more than happy to spend whatever time we need.
Great. Good evening. I'm Kara Wanzer. I'm the administrator of the Analysis and Student Outcomes. Is it on? I'm very loud in general, so it's surprising. I just put together the packet that was sent out to you last week. It began with the demographics for the school year, our October collection, which is what the state uses to determine our eligibility around free and reduced lunch and things like that, our ELL students. So that was made available for you. Looking at about 54% of our student population free and reduced lunch, and that was consistent for the 2016 year as well. These are the numbers, just so you have an N number associated. How many students does that actually mean for the percentages? I also gave you an overview of what the SBAC, or the Spire Balance Assessment, actually assesses students in. So there is a mathematics and ELA portion, or the English Language Arts. There's two sections to the SBAC portion of the presentation. The first is the ELA, or the English Language Arts and Literacy section. What I did was break it out by grade level, so you can see in red was the 2014-15 school year, and in blue is the 15-16. What happened was they took the performance task out of the test for the 15-16 school year. The state then reconfigured the results for the 14-15 school year in order to make them an apples-to-apples comparison. So they took out essentially the score for the performance task on each student and gave us new numbers for by grade level, by school, and that type of thing for just the computer adaptive test, so we could compare different school years. So that is the students who took it at the elementary level, seeing an increase across grade levels. The middle school then is broken out here. I'm sorry, we begin with this statewide, just so you know. That we're doing it for comparison purposes. Just, I wanted you to have some reference point for some of the data. So that was the state, and then it's the district. Yep, sorry about that. So still, we have a similar trend that the state saw for as far as percentage increase. So it's broken out. By each. So then we move to the district from the elementary and the middle school, comparing each school year. And then it goes to math. Then again, it's statewide first. Nothing changed about the SBAC math assessment. And then middle school, district. So that's the elementary level. We saw drastic changes at the 5th grade around there. And there were some changes at a curricular level with some of the math coaches. And then the district for the middle school. Oops, sorry. So then we have the STAR overview. This is the second year that we're administering the STAR assessment. We're administering it now K-12. Last year we administered only to K-9. And then as we administered it to all of our ELL and special education students in 10, 11, and 12, but that was the subpopulation that we were using in order to track some of their growth. So this is just an overview to remind you of the STAR assessment and what it's assessing. At the kindergarten and grade 1 level, we are typically using an early literacy assessment. So this is for kind of pre-readers, students who are not considered probable readers yet. They come into kindergarten, they're assessed in the fall, and we were seeing about a 10 percentage point gain in kindergarten from fall to spring. And that's moving students into our district benchmark for proficiency. Then in grade 1 is a little bit tricky, and you're going to see as we move into the reading scores, you continue to take the early literacy assessment if you're not considered a probable reader. So I'm in grade 1, I start out in the fall, I'm not yet reading text on my own, and then I start with early literacy. By the winter, if I'm now a probable reader, I'm going to switch assessments. So it's not the same students who are typically taking the assessment in the reading portion. So for the students who stayed with the early literacy assessment in grade 1, we saw a tremendous gain with those students. This was the early literacy overall, and I put a note at the bottom just to give you more of an indication of what we would like to see. This is how our students entered in the fall, as the green side. So 31% were in the early emergent and 48% with late emergent. So those scores we want to see go down by the end of the year. We want to see kids moving into the transitional and probable reader status. Once they're probable readers, they move into the reading assessment. So the trend that we would like to see is what we did see, moving folks out of the early emergent and late emergent. What I did here was put together now a star for our star reading, which is taken by students typically grade 1 and last year through grade 9. This year we're taking it through 12. I compared the fall and the spring just so you saw the numbers side by side. Again, in grade 1, we have a switch of the amount of students who are taking the test. More kids in our grade 1 level take it by the end of the year. So 76% in the fall were all more of our high-flying students who are more high-achieving, who are coming in as strong readers in first grade. So as we move through the year, we see more of the population that's typical demographics of Danbury Public Schools joining that assessment group. Then this is broken out by grade level, just in chart form. And then at the secondary level. And then I included an overall district. For the overall district, that does include our 10, 11, and 12 graders who are special ed and ELL. So it's a little bit different than our overall demographics, but it gives a good indication of where we were last year. This slide here is a matched cohort slide. So what I did was took the kids who are currently our students now and said, how are they doing? How did they do last year? And so if they took it in the fall and the spring, it wasn't just all of our students, this is the same kids. So moving from our ELL population increased their proficiency by 10 percentage points overall. Our free lunch kids went from 25 to 34, reduced lunch from 30 to 40, and then our overall moved from 37 to 45. So again, that's a matched cohort of students. I did the same for STAR Math, and again, we have grade 1 being a little atypical of the rest of the population. You don't test students in the STAR Math until they are probable readers taking the reading assessment. So you're seeing a similar trend. More kids start to take it around the winter and the spring. In the fall, it's only kids who are entering who are strong readers or early readers for their grade level. So the STAR Math is broken then out by the grade level, secondary as well, and I gave you a district comparison, and then similarly broken out with a matched cohort by those subgroups. My turn. So the SAT is different this year, and so effectively what we're looking at is a baseline. And so this is it's new information to us in terms of how the students fared. The test looks different than it has in years past. So Kara provided us with sort of a pre-March. What did the old SAT look like, and what does the new SAT look like? So I think one of the things to highlight is that the test is now broken into 3 portions. There's the evidence-based reading and writing, which requires students to be able to read text and identify pieces of evidence to support claims. So it's very much in line with what the Common Core is asking of us to do. So it's nice to have an aligned assessment. Similarly with math, as it has been in the years past with CAP, there's a lot of reading that students have to do. What's different is that the essay is now optional. And so a lot of colleges are now coming out and saying, we don't really care about that essay.
We've advised students to take it, because we didn't know what to provide them with in terms of guidance. But the State Department did not require us to take the essay, which was unfortunate because we had seen some nice gains in writing on the CAP. So the students, the results that you're going to see are based on their reading and math. The scoring is at the bottom. So they're looking at a 400 to 800, or 200 to 800 rather, on a subtest for a combined total of a perfect score to be 1600, and then the essay becomes sort of gravy on top. This is the data that are provided to us by the State Department of Education. There are a number of asterisks there that I just want to address. If the population is below 6, they do not report the number because they want to protect student privacy. And so this is something that we've been looking at, and as Dr. Pasquarella indicated, a lot of our improvement plan strategies were in response to this information, although we do so cautiously because we want to make sure that we have some trend data behind us, but it was a good place for us to start. One of the things that's extremely helpful about the SAT is that the Khan Academy is linked to it. So the Khan Academy is a free web-based platform that students can access. And it is integrated with the College Board. And so once we get the PSAT scores back, which we're hopeful will happen next month, students are able to have a specific plan just for them. So the College Board information sort of zapped over to Khan and provides the student with a prescripted sort of program that will give them practice in the areas that are identified in the PSAT as needing shoring up. And so what we've done is to have a concerted effort to get our students registered for Khan. We do that in the Freshman Academy. We do it again. So now we had our Algebra 2 teachers, which is our typical junior year math class, signing students up for that. We've just done some professional development, in particular with the math department, where we think we'll be able to get a lot of traction with this, because there is no reading component for Khan. Our advanced placement program remains growing. As of we're up to 24 classes at this point. This year, we were happy to see a nice increase in the minority students that are availing themselves of the program. And that's something that we really make a large push behind. We send home personalized letters to any student who demonstrates that they have potential for being successful in advanced placement. And that's information that we get from the College Board. So the College Board, they're the organization that runs the PSAT, the SAT, and the Advanced Placement Program. And they have done a lot of work in the last year to retool the amount of information that we can glean based upon how students are performing, not just in the aggregate, but also in terms of individual students. And so we continue to grow the program, and recently have provided students with a practice program that's part of Naviance that I mentioned at the last board meeting. So it's traditionally utilized for transcript processing and college applications, but it also has an advanced placement support that we are utilizing at the high school.
Let me see if I can wrap this up for the board and then certainly open it to questions. If you would go to your page that looks like that, the last 2 pages, I'm going to ask you respectfully if you would mind circling a couple of terms on each bullet. As you're getting to that page, just let me share with you that our overall growth, there are no surprises for us. Overall, we're pleased with it. Our overall growth reflects in large part what we see across the state. If you look at that first bullet, to the far right of the top part of the first line, you'll see in parentheses or brackets trend data. If you would please circle that. We look at data over time, 3, 4, 5, 6 years. If you notice, many of our patterns show kind of a stepwise increase. So you'll see a line and then the next bar is higher. While that's good, I mean, that's certainly what you want, growth. Unless it's consistent over time, it's really not indicative of our program working. So you heard Meg, you heard Carol, some of these data sets are just too new, first time out of the box. So it really will take time, 2, 3, 4 years to really determine if the growth that we think we're seeing is really, if it has staying power. The second bullet, if you would again move to the far right of that first line, where it says plus 3% or minus 3%, we talk about statistical significance, meaning if you go up a point, you go down a point, you really just a flat growth. Typically, psychometricians and people who look at testing data talk about an increase or decrease at least of 3%. And you notice many of the data sets that Karen and Meg were showing have 7, 8, 9, 10, 15 points growth, which is really good, but before we celebrate, we want to make sure that we have staying power over time with that. Third bullet, the first word, please circle that, poverty. That is the most pernicious of all challenges that we have. There are huge amounts of national research that strongly suggest the more impoverished a child, the more challenging it is for those youngsters to be educated because their background knowledge, you'll see the word in here, schema, that means what kids bring to school. So if I'm a youngster who has gone on European vacations and gone to the zoo and the theater and all these wonderful experiences, my schema, my background is very rich and large. If I'm a youngster that does a staycation and I basically just stay home this summer, we don't have a lot of reading materials in the home, not a lot of conversation going on. I typically stay on the corner, just kind of hang out with my friends. Their schema tends to be smaller. The first day of the first year of a student's career, we see the achievement gaps based on poverty. Some kids are dramatically behind, and some kids are dramatically advanced, and then there's that group all the way in the middle. The fourth bullet, if you go again to the top line and go to the far right and circle deficiencies in their native language, there's a misnomer out there, misperception that students who are English language learners, I'm a native Spanish speaker, I don't speak English. Once I learn to speak English, I'll do just fabulously well. We find many of these youngsters in their native language from their native countries have real fundamental challenges in the basic skills areas. So even though they learn English, they're still tremendously challenged. So we try to ascertain whether it's deficiency of the language acquisition piece or the deficiency in their native language or completely a combination of the two. Bottom, if you would go in about 5 or 6 words and just multiple challenges, we have some kids who are English language learners who also live in poverty. They might also be special needs kids. So they come to us with a real set of challenges that we have to peel the layers away. If you would turn over to the next page, please. I'm not going to walk you through those. They're very self-explanatory. You saw that overall we feel comfortable with the growth that we have. We see some nice growth trends. We see a couple of maintenance patterns where the scores are the same. Nothing that we saw surprised us. It talks about there's growth all grade levels except in grade 1. It dips. As Kara explained, we're moving kids who have real literacy challenges. By middle of the year, we've addressed a lot of those. So we move them into a more heterogeneous group of kids, and they, not blaming the youngster by any means, but they tend to bring the overall average down because we're now putting them in with the general population, which is exactly what we want to do. And so that's predictable. We weren't surprised with that at all. And the last page, if you would take the top bullet, the first word in the bottom line, the term transitioning, it's very predictable. It's a national trend. Kids go from elementary school, in our case, the terminal grade is grade 5, to middle school, in our case, of course, it's grade 6. When youngsters go from a small elementary to a relatively large middle school, it really throws them for a loop. It takes them a while to get their sea legs. Many schools in the country have gone to a K-8 profile pattern to address that transition piece. There's still a transition when you move from one teacher. Now I have 5 teachers, but it seems to be a little bit easier because they're in the same building typically. The same trend line across the country exists between 8th grade and 9th grade. Kids are going from our fairly large middle schools to the largest high school in Connecticut, which is the size of some school systems. So they walk into this vast mini city and they go, oh my gosh, what's the deal here? And it takes them a while to get their equilibrium. The final, again, where we see some dips, we expected it. We have some math challenges. We have a math problem of practice, 4th through 8th grade. It's pretty much a perennial problem. We've put some aggressive efforts into that. We've had programs, as you know, about Read 180 and System 44 to address some literacy deficiencies with kids. We have a lot of moving parts. If you remember from last board meeting's presentation on Goal 1, you saw the initiatives that we have going in. The piece that we're certainly not pleased with is the last piece. And whatever that saying is, always leave them laughing. This is not so much a laughing part, but it's reality, and always put, very transparent. The gaps that we've seen over time remain. Our Asian kids, our white kids, have continued to outscore our African American kids and our Latino kids. Again, it's a national trend line. We're working aggressively to try and mitigate that. Really encouraging, you heard Meg talk about an increase on the part of minority youngsters taking more AP courses, the most advanced, most aggressive and challenging of our courses. So that's very encouraging. And pat on the back of the board when we went through that slimming down of tracking and open enrollment for AP. We were hoping that over time we'd create a culture where kids felt safe taking these more challenging courses, and certainly the data sets are not suggesting that we do. So closure piece, we feel good about the progress that we've made. We always leave you with the thought we have a lot more work to do, and we continue to focus on that. As Sal said, our coherence plan is laser-like targeted on those deficient areas. 21st century problem solving, making an argument based on evidence. Those two are in every classroom. That's what we're pushing for. Kindergartens with the 12th grade AP, the most challenging AP course. With that, we certainly would open it to any questions.
So,
Sal has
I do want to mention something. Some years back, I think fourth year now, possibly, we've tracked the high school teacher support. We also been gaining more instructional time through the elimination of final exam and traditional final exam, still exams one, and then not sit and take them for a week. All of those has really impacted the amount of work that we're able to do during the school year. There's a report that just came out, and I want you to share it with you, because this whole thing is what happens when they leave us. You detract, you challenge them, you up the rigor. Kids are struggling, but they're moving. When they leave us, what happens to us?
So the most recent information showed that our kids' persistence rate, which is measured by a group called the Clearinghouse, and so they track students. So once the kids leave us, we only know what they're doing if they share that. But because they have that ID number, it's collected nationally through the Clearinghouse. We found that we have an 89% persistence rate, which means that 89% of our kids who start as freshmen become sophomores.
College?
I'm sorry, yes, in college. And so that's really something we're extremely proud of, and really attribute a great deal of that to the students being expected in these D-track classes with the new graduation rates, as our poverty doubled at the high school, to be holding where we are, I think says a lot about kids stepping up to the challenge when you welcome them to do so.
So with that, we're not really happy with this. I think, we're looking at the STAR about increasing the rigor standard there as well, as we become conversant with it. I think we found some real takeaways in terms of gaps in our curriculum and instruction. We sat for 2 days. Every school now has produced a plan based on data, not just visceral reactions to things, but based on some evidence, and they're focusing on the changes so that our goals are concert with board goals regarding our improvement efforts. Now, how we move along that continuum will take time, but the poverty kids will always be the poverty kids. Hispanic kids will always be Hispanic kids. They are kids. Blacks will always be we're able to move kids through, given if we're doing the right things, and we're able to provide them with a program, which is important. So with that, you'll hear more this year with the goals, but these are last year's results in terms of our assessment.
Okay, Richard, for the question.
Dr. Wise, you mentioned in the
Give him a microphone.
conclusions, the trend data, over what period of time? This is a snapshot of 1 year over the other, and it's because the data is new, the testing is new. So over how many years do you have to wait then to, on a consistent basis?
Typically it's a minimum of 3 years. And 5 years is usually what we like to see, and better than that is 7 to 10 years. So 3 would be on the low end. Those members of the board who have been here for a long time with me, at times we've had these huge spikes in our growth, and wow, should we celebrate that? And you've heard me say, not necessarily. It could be a 1 year blip. It's a very strong group of kids coming through. And then 1 year we had a crash on our SATs. And everybody said, oh, should we panic? No. We've been tracking these youngsters since kindergarten, and they've always been a very challenging group of kids. So my hunch is next year we'll be right back where we were, and the following year we were right back where we were. So 3 years, 5 years is better, and 8 years, you know, you really have some substantive traction if you're able to maintain it that long.
And the comparison is, it's a different group of kids each year, right? It's not the same friend of mine.
Okay.
Second question.
One quick point, Richard, on that. You bring up a real critical piece. We're very careful, and when a board member will ask us, we really try to pull things apart. You've heard Sal say in the past, this youngster, this kindergartner, this youngster, rather, 10th grader, has been with us since kindergarten. These other kids came in 8th, 9th grade, for example. So we try to match apples to apples whenever we can. So you can actually see the impact of our instructional program. The longer the kids have been with us, our track record for years now has been the better they do.
Two other questions. One, I'm embarrassed to ask on the SAT, the SAT 2016, you have a subject that says ELA. What is that?
English language arts.
Okay.
English language arts, and you're not going to see, you will only see ELA on the College Board, so we were not trying to acronym you guys to that, but that's just how they report it. ERW, you'll also see on that report, is evidence-based reading and writing.
One other question. There was something that was interesting on the reading where first, I lost track. When they first came in, I don't want to tie you up, the score seemed to be higher in the kindergarten. I think it was on the kindergarten. The score seemed to be higher, and then it dropped down. But then the next springtime, it was the opposite, which I thought was.
Eric, can you just explain again on different groups?
So it's probably grade 1 that you're looking at, where we see the decrease of student
Right.
proficiency. So the N number changed, and I can always provide you with, further kind of drilling down. But what I put here was, in the fall, 133 students in the whole district took the reading test. By the spring, 726 kids were eligible to take it. So then that was more reflective of the overall grade 1. In the beginning, it was our strongest readers at that point.
I can get that footnote. Sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. It's a lot of information.
That's the whole point of digging down on these things, to see what they do mean.
Right. Thank you so much.
For the board, as you're thinking about this, if you look at the 3 sections here, which we worked with you with, it's what do we have to do as an organization to learn to help us get better at this? What do we have to do for professional learning for our folks? And then what do the students have to do? So we all have a part in how to get better and what we can do in terms of making things happen much more effectively in the classroom. It's not just a student issue of getting smarter and us giving them stuff. We all need to get better around this. There are instructional rounds. We did it yesterday, walked around the middle schools, looked at the instruction, looked at the focus, their broad view, looked at the focus, they're doing it at Westside, the high school does it, the elementary. This is a concerted effort and focusing on, instruction. Not trying to figure out who's not doing what, but what are we doing well? What aren't we doing well? How do we add to what we're doing so we can be much more effective? What kind of training do we need? So it is a cycle. And Kara, I don't think you talked about, there's that whole data-wise thing that she's been trained, that's been helping us come through this process on actionable items.
Anybody else have any questions, please, for Kara? Or maybe? Ladies, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, have a nice day.
Don't run away.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Leave quietly. Leave quietly. Run, go, get out.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving, thanks, guys. I know it's a busy week. Thanks.
Turn the light on the.
Meeting at my office now, guys.
Yeah.
It's all said and done. It was very interesting. I'm sorry?
You should call the IT guy.
I'm sorry. Did you want to leave this day? No. This song? Oh, good.
Yes, ma'am.
Going to
sixth grades ready for their high school experience. Is there an opportunity for us to do the same thing at the middle school for the sixth graders?
When we looked at the academy structure, that was one of the ones we looked at. And I guess the takeaway there wasn't much support to do it. We were organized, that was one of the ideas we looked at when we talked about different academies. We created a sixth grade academy. And looking at the sixth grade, they are basically self-contained, was what we walked away with. Even though they're integrated throughout in some of the things, the way they're organized. So we didn't go down that venue. That's not completely off. We are looking at fourth and fifth grade, transitioning to middle school in terms of, they go from ostensibly 8 teachers to 5 or 6 teachers. That's the hard part that we're concerned with. So we're looking at 4 or 5, and maybe do some rearranging and continue looking at sixth grade. The results for sixth grade, the gaps in sixth grade, I think we're coming around better prescriptively what we're doing with kids, from my understanding, from Ed at the time and from Pat, was that the kids were making the transition adjustments. Their suspensions and their off fast behavior was not as high as the ninth grade, which was one of the primary reasons why they were well. Those kids are really failing the most, leaving campus the most, having all of those kind of intangibilities going on. They weren't experiencing that in sixth grade, so it was like, why are we doing this? We focused on different instruction priorities. That was talked about. That was talked about.
Okay. Anybody else have questions? No follow-up questions on that? Seeing none, we're moving forward to action items. A.
That the Board of Education accept the October 2016 operating results analysis general fund in accordance with 16-156.
Second.
Seconded by Pat. Any questions? Okay.
The question with regard to the self-funding, the self-insured and that fund that we had, was it $6 million, and are we pretty much capped at it now that we don't have funded this year?
Right now, we're just in the middle of our audit. They're actually here today. We have, it looks about $900,000 left to go. We have to get the $6 million. We have about $5.1 million in the fund right now. About another $900,000 we still have to fund.
Anybody else have questions for Joe? Joe, do you have something you want to say?
We're monitoring everything very closely. It's a tighter year than I've seen in most years, I will say that.
And we thank you for that.
Gift cards might help.
Gift cards? Yeah, hold your breath. No, not a problem. Wasn't that my question? I'm so sorry. All in favor? Anybody opposed or abstaining? No. Moving on to B.
That the Board of Education accept the October 2016 operating results analysis grants projects in accordance with 16-157.
Seconded by Michael. Any questions?
The only point, the magnet school grant is still outstanding with the state. We did get a 6% reduction, but we don't have the final number yet. They're still counting how many people went through the magnet program. So that's the only grant they have out there that's at least not nailed down, which we don't want.
Thank you, Joe. Anybody else have any questions? Anybody saying rotaries in that one?
No.
Okay. All right, all in favor? Anybody opposed? Except for me opposed. All right, all in favor, that's it. It's passed. Guess what's that?
Thank you.
George,
I'll go to B
Jesus.
first, mind
I'm down.
Shelter Rock classrooms are coming along. The foundation work is done. Delivery scheduled for November 30th. The bulk of the project will be obviously the secured corridor. We're going to have a change order on that for probably about $100,000, which the project's still under budget, so there's money there to do that. There's a lot of additional fire code regulation stuff when you build those corridors, so that really is going to take the time. But they'll be on site for the 30th. I'm thinking right around Christmas we'll be finally probably in and moving the kids in there and everything else, so.
Excellent.
We're doing some adjustments around for parking.
We are working with the city on the parking because a chunk of that blacktop was temporary parking over there. So we're gonna try to make either a milling section with some crushed stone on the side of the current parking lot. But yeah, it's moving along. Good contractor so far, please.
And on too bad Megan wasn't there, but Megan, Dan, myself, and Roy did a presentation, they did it mainly, on reimagining the high school, personalized learning. And we talked about the freshman academy, we talked about the DECO program, the AP program, and it was well received by the individuals there. Manchester was the other school that also gave a presentation. They had a little different way of going about it. I thought we presented a pretty good picture of the interaction with quite proud of the work that we did.
May I say something?
You're in charge.
It's not my job. Okay, so it was such a good presentation. I was sitting listening to him and I wanted to jump up. I was so excited and say, yeah, that's our school. And then Manchester went and then I could hurry up and get out of here. So, and even you were good, so.
I appreciate that.
All you do is introduce them.
I'm sorry? You mean you were good?
You said they didn't, right?
No, they did a great job.
Really, it was
That's not fair.
outstanding, right? You weren't
You
too
can't get
bad.
there if you can't envision it.
Right, you're right.
So, but it's all nice, and I'm serious about the work that you permit us to do. You may think it makes a big difference in the willingness to take some risks, to do some things. It just is. And I appreciate you doing it. Otherwise, we wouldn't need it on our side. It's just not gonna get there if we had impediments in front of us. And we're not always right, but we get that and try to make adjustments. But kids are actually moving ahead. And attendance is better, post-secondary is better, behavior is better. There's a lot of good things going on at the high school. A lot to be proud of. And
Tremendous amount of stuff, right? It's pretty
and
outstanding,
thank you for all of that.
considering it's bigger than most people's districts.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else, though?
No, that's it. Those two things are the only.
That's it? Okay.
So she wrote.
All right, it's my turn. Everybody get one of these on that side. The colored one goes back to Fred. No, that's you. Okay, I'm actually going to turn this over to Fred. He brought this to my attention and thinks that we should get a contingent of people, a cohort of people to go from here. So go.
So I attended one of these leadership institutes last spring. It was a great experience. It was a little similar to the CAVE convention, but it was on a much, much smaller scale. I mean, you're sitting in a conference room with representatives from districts across the state. There's maybe 20 to 25 people there, you know, maybe 2 or 3 at most per district. It was mostly like one board member from each district. Some of the sessions had presenters that were at the CAVE convention. So I mean, I thought it was a great experience. The only thing is, obviously, it's a drive that you have to make all the way up to Weathersfield. I would suggest whoever's interested to go. I mean, if there's 3 people that are interested to go, 4 people to go, I'd leave it up to them. If there's only like 1 or 2 other people interested, I'd be happy to try and do it with you again. I believe they hold one in the spring, and they also hold one in the summer sometime. So if anyone's interested, you know, let me know. I'd be happy to do it with you. Or like I said, if there's already 3 people that are interested, you know, by all means, it's a great experience. Patrice does a great job. Also, another aspect of this too is I believe they offer some sort of certification program through CAVE where you can become one of these. I forget, you collect credits towards some sort of degree program through CAVE, and so the workshops through this go towards that if you sign up for it. So it's a good experience, so let me know if you're interested and be happy to do it with you.
Let's put it together, you know, some people should go. Another thing we're going to talk about is there's an upcoming training session. Richard Janelli, you want to talk about this for a minute? This is your project.
Oh, okay.
Is that what you're trying to?
What we're trying to do on that, what I refer to this school funding coalition, the approach we have taken, we had a meeting I think a couple of months ago where it was attended by about 10 or 15 people, and from that group, they pretty much committed to continue coming in. We want to use that as our, let's call it executive core base. One of the things that they had discussed was, since many of the people was the first time attending there, we wanted to go through and give them a brief financial update as to what the impact is on the district of Danbury. And so there are 3 dates here that they're going to be given this funding lecture at, and it will be done by a summary of pretty much what Katie Roy had done, not the big elaborate one, but more of a snapshot. And then I think Joe, I don't know whether he volunteered to be there from Danbury or gave information to Eileen Klein, where she could give the impact that Danbury has. One of the most important things we had talked about was to have an understanding that why we need the money, okay? Not to just go and complain you need money because everybody's going to say everybody needs money, but there are definitive and definite reasons why Danbury needs it. You know, one case in point, we can mention two, is that there is a population growth, and we're unique. Many districts are probably the only one that has it. And then the diversity of our population and the poverty levels all impacts the needs that we have here on education and to fund the dollars toward those needs. So what we're trying to do is get the basic group of people here educated in the economics. And then what we're looking to do is to go out. Each of them will go out and try to engage more people, so that the more people we have, we will, with them being educated, this group would make up a coalition of the residents of Danbury and the stakeholders in Danbury. One of the aspects of it that we're missing is the business community. We, as you know from the board, have been unable to crack the barrier with the business community to have an interest and have them take part. We're looking for ways to get to know these companies, to have introductions in there. I've worked with Michael, with the DSADC, who over the years is very strong in the business community, and it's not competitive. It's not that we're a nonprofit looking to fundraise and take away from their membership, but it may be that through DSABC, they may be able to, through their affiliation with these businesses, may be able to give us some leads and introductions into the community. What we're trying to do is to make this coalition a cross-section of Danbury, not to be made up of the Board of Education. It's made up of independent citizens, and they call it stakeholders, from students to parents to elected officials to business people. And we have about 6 bullet points that we sat down with Dr. Sal that we feel are pertinent bullet points, and under the guidance of Katie and our own staff with Joe, we will have financial information so that when the legislators in session and with the lobbyists, we may be able to go up and target certain people and give them that 30-second elevator speech that we want on certain points. So it's going to take a long time. You know, it's not a one-shot deal. As I said before we put this together, it's going to take several years. But the most important thing is the foundation and the commitment to it, and to continue to build on it. So they have basically 3 dates. I mean, there's nothing new that you're going to learn if you attend these dates. But if you know anybody, that any friends or relatives or any parents that are not familiar with it, it is an informative session because it allows them to understand the financial needs that Danbury has in terms of the deficit from the state funding. So we're asking you to reach out to anybody and ask them if they have some time. There are 3 dates that are going to be at the Danbury High School that we're going to make these presentations, these financial presentations, and a bit of a background about the coalition. One is Monday, November 28th. It's 6:30 to 8 o'clock. The other is Thursday, December 1st, from 6:30 to 8. And the other is Wednesday, December 7th, from 6:30 to 8 o'clock. And it's done in a classroom D467. I don't know what that is, but
I'll send an email to follow up on it.
but it's worthwhile. I mean, this is something that so many parents should be engaged in. You talk to people, you can talk to some, a couple of principals that don't live in the city, and they're not aware of the impact. Everybody lives in their own little world, and same thing when you work, you live in your own little department, you know what the rest of the company does. But this is so critical, that people at least be educated as to what our situation is, what are the obstacles. Yes, we need money, but more importantly, they have to understand the challenges. And if these challenges aren't going to go away, they're just going to increase. And to be part of it, you shouldn't just look the other way and say, well, it doesn't affect me, because, in some way, it does directly affect you. But it is the educational process, and the more people we have attending this, it certainly makes it that the city of Danbury, when we go to legislators, is represented and they're united, and it's just not a little fraction group. And I look at it very positively to say that if we do this well, there are other things that we can do in the community. If you have this coalition of a strong community that is targeting certain things that the city needs, if they're a strong, organized group, they may be able to at least make some headway, or to make their opinion known. I often say the wheel that squeaks the loudest gets the oil, but it's got to be an educated wheel.
Okay.
Educated in terms of, educated in terms of the facts, not just whining that you need money.
Okay,
Thank you.
and to that point, I disagreeing with Richard as to whether any of us should attend. We need to, yes, it's important for us to get other people to go, but it's also important for us to know the right words to say. I mean, to sit and say, we need money for, for what? Why do we need more money? How are we going to get it? If you go to this seminar, they'll be able to tell you how to do that properly. And it's important for us to get our friends and neighbors to go so that they can advocate also, but we also need to know the right thing to say.
But what's also, piggyback on that, I neglected to say, it is important, anybody who has a friend on the council, a council person, I'm going to try to have Conti there as well, because I think that shows importance. The boards, we don't have to have 11 people from the board there, there'll be a couple, 3 people. That, and the board will be represented. However, I'm not saying don't come, but if we have council people there, at least the residents coming in see elected officials. And they say, okay, you have an elected official on the Board of Ed, you have an elected official on a common council. At least they feel that the officials themselves feel it's important enough to listen to and take part. And we hope to have some of these, elected officials on the council be, members at least on the, in the committee, so that, we can take the benefit of saying that they're behind it. So if you have any, if you're friendly with some of these council, people, you might want to mention it to them. It would be, a big favor for us.
I was thinking that maybe should ask the representative, the newly elected representative.
You sworn in, you're not sworn in yet. You're just elected.
I thought maybe we should do that also, along with Mr. Conti.
The one on Monday, the 28th, at 6:30, but we were invited also that night to the National Honor Society swearing in. So perhaps, I know the time overlaps, but perhaps we could stop by for a little bit and then go to the swearing in. Anyway.
The 7th we can't go because that's our annual meeting, so we all have to have our little bodies here. Okay, and not here, the West Side Middle School. All right, that's on the 7th. Also an important date that's not mentioned here is on the 5th. Stand Together and Make a Difference is doing a presentation on the survey that was done at Denver High School to the public. It would be very important for some of us to go. We all don't have to go, but it needs to be representation from the Board of Education that we're standing behind them, right? And we're doing the work with them. And that's the 5th, and it's in the community room at the police station. I'll send out an email to back all this stuff up for you, but it is important that we all be there. Is there anywhere else that we need to be?
I do want to mention one thing.
Okay.
There's a new book that just came out, I think it came out the 21st. Two authors, one is James Patterson, the mystery writer, and the other one is strange that they match up, Bill O'Reilly. And it's a kid's book, and you don't really grab it. It's called Please, I mean, Please Say Please.
Mm-hmm.
With the understanding behind it is try to have people to be kind, and similar to what we started here, to say hello. I mean, so I think that's a great thing. You know, they're going around on the circuit publishing it, and they're saying a little profits are going to a nonprofit. But it'd be interesting. I'd like to take a look and maybe if it's good, you know, buy some of these and donate them to PTOs.
Are you going to do that?
Sure.
There you go. Okay. Oh, you're going to bring your used ones? That's good.
Sure, I get it.
Okay. At your place, there's a folder, and it's the folder that was at the seminar or the class, or whatever you want to call it, I attended at Cade. I mean, I attended a number of them. This was the one that was most applicable to us, all right? So it's not anything except read it if you read. That was the one on Saturday. Yeah, Saturday morning. Saturday morning? Saturday morning. Alice and I both attended it. It was very, very well done and very applicable to us. So let's read it and see, and we'll discuss it some other time. The other thing, did you have something you wanted to say about Kate?
The superintendent evaluation committee met, and we came up with a plan for 2017 to get together. And more or less, we looked at the two evaluation forms, the one that we used in 2016 and the one for 2017. So we sort of decided as a group going forward that we will get together as a committee and sort of plan out our own little form. So I want to thank the committee members for coming and sharing the information that they shared with us. I would just like to say about the convention. The convention to me is a great experience. And that experience, if you sit down with other boards of education and listen to the things that they're doing, we are so advanced. Mm-hmm. And we're doing good work. And I would just encourage the ones that haven't attended some of the workshops, just pick a workshop or a couple and just go. Because it is education. And as I listen to some of the things that some of the other boards is doing, I said, gosh, that happened to us about 15 or 20 years ago. Yeah. So we're on the move, and I know that we have to make a lot of progress. But we're still doing good. And that's due because of great leadership and great teachers that we have.
You're doing very well. It's big enough now. But it's very true. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to comment on the CAVE convention also. Like Sal mentioned, our team did a great job there. You know, and one thing I really realized is Danbury is a very unique district. I mean, I went to five workshops, and you know, it's tough to kind of compare us to anyone because of our size and stuff like that. You get good ideas, and you know, it's a very valuable convention. And also, Gladys said, you know, it's good to sit with other board members and you hear their horror stories, and then they say, you know what, we actually work pretty well together compared to what you hear out there. So, and that's a credit to everyone on the board and the administration, stuff like that. So, it was a good experience. I think, you know, by seeing and listening to everybody else, it gives you a little insight on you know, things to come and what people are doing. Also, I attended the ACE Thanksgiving today, which was fantastic. Free food's always good, so it tastes a little bit better. But they did a great job. I just like to compliment them, recognize them. Everybody there always does a good job.
Mhm. Yeah, I think they've not done so well in the last. It's a great thing. The cave convention I thought was really good, but it is what Ralph just said and Clara said. We've all concurred and haven't spoken about it individually. So it's not a problem, but we're big and we have big problems. And it's hard to sit in some of these seminars and listen to things that you heard 15 years ago and try to make it all go together. So it's almost like I wish they had a separate one that was just for districts our size. You know,
One for big problems.
Where are you fixing?
The urban superintendents have a number of them that do some seminars.
well, that's good for you guys.
The Cape, there's not many full board members like that. The urban kind of settings, it's more relegated to the administration.
Why don't we start one?
The whole deal is because I'm actually made friends this time with
Some
people
of them are
because we all have the same opinion. And when we're talking different Stanford and Milwaukee. Go ahead.
I was going to say, some of the large state boards like us are not elected as you are. You're appointed by the mayors. There's a whole different constituency and priorities in terms of whether they operationalize it. You are, so there are differences, even like you're organized as a group in a large urban setting. We have a different lens.
But we're not unique. Are we unique?
Well, for example, Hartships appointed, Bridgeport appointed. I'm not sure about Blue Ridge, I can't tell you. I think that's appointed as well.
Yeah, Norwalk is elected.
Stanford's
Stanford's
elected, and Stanford's on any one. And we
We are.
three.
Bridgeport?
No, Bridgeport's is appointed.
That explains things.
But anyway, it doesn't mean, that all I'm saying is that most of those, you don't see a convention just for urban boards, although it's something that Kate could talk about, see if they want to construct something.
Yeah, because they have an opinion on everything, Kate, so I'm sure that they have a solution to this also.
It was me and
Maybe
Kate.
to recommend it.
Because if we didn't go,
At 1 o'clock at our meeting that we had at Cave, we had the core superintendents meeting
yeah,
on
he's
the legislative agenda. We could have a follow-up session for urban board members, have a session.
Yeah, not say a whole convention.
So next year, we could work on creating a session like that.
well, yeah, because when I attended this session here that I just handed out was completely different than, because the majority of the people in the room came from the larger district. There was the gentleman that came from the district that said, you know, we only have one black student, or I think it was 2. And I went, oh, Stan? No. We have a lot in common here.
But I did make a recommendation to them next year.
Well, if there's something, because it doesn't make sense. You can only do the same seminars over and over again.
And Dr. Sapp, I do make a recommendation that our presenters, some of our presenters, they don't come prepared. We went to a couple of workshops and, you know, there's no paper, but, you know, they're talking about their life history. We're there to be involved in the workshop. Now, how many degrees they got, their wife got, we get to the meat of it, and have a folder prepared, not
Yeah, really.
There was a guy, what, about 7 minutes in, we got 7 minutes in about this, he's been talking about this and this and that, and it was like.
We just got the evaluation. Should have done the evaluation. I just got the electronic.
Yeah, I did, no, I did all that.
Yeah.
Well, I do my
Thank
work.
I will follow up with the seminar, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
We'll
This
figure
is
out
just,
something.
because we count too.
I can make a little.
I make the motion.
I can adjourn, Sharon. Okay, thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay.
good luck.
You didn't say anything?